Let's start it. Okay. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Department of Family Medicine, Government Medical College, Kozhikode, I welcome you all to the 8th topic of the series of webinar we are hosting. On this day of independence, our topic is freedom from diabetes, NASH, PCOS, and hypertension. Is it a dream or reality? And speaker for today is Dr. P.K. Shashidharan, former HOD of the Department of General Medicine, Government Medical College, Kozhikode. And those who have any queries, please put in the chat box or raise your hands. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Good evening, all. It appears that we have a feeling now that it is essential to have all the non-communicable diseases among us. Are they really inevitable, natural? Because with the name essential hypertension suggests that it is essential to have it. So that feeling is persisting, and we feel that we are destined to live with them. In spite of the fact that all the non-communicable diseases are multiplying here, how long we can continue like this? Is it not time to think of a freedom from these lifestyle diseases or non-communicable diseases, infections including? So the topic today is to discuss on how we can prevent these non-communicable diseases, or how we can reverse if they are got early. I will share my screen now. Can you see now? Hello.
Yes, sir.
The title that was given is Freedom from Diabetes, NASH, Hypertension, Polycythemia, PCOS. Is it a dream or a reality? It's not a dream. It is possible, provided we start early. That's the point we are trying to look at. This is the overview of my talk. I will give a background on which how this topic is relevant, and on my original studies on nutrition, based on which I am giving this topic, and what actually leads to conditions like diabetes, NASH, hypertension, PCOS, metabolic syndrome, and then the concept of balanced diet and the practical tips to follow it. Then the points needed for patient education, diet and lifestyle management in the NCDs, and the social aspects to be addressed. Finally, COVID, non-communicable disease, diet and lifestyle relation also will be briefly touched upon before I conclude with take-home messages. Coming to the background of the talk, we all know that lifestyle diseases are assuming pandemic proportions. People do not even know what to eat and what not to eat. If you look at, man is the only animal which does not know what to eat. All other animals know it. It is the only animal that eats for fun or entertainment. And the awareness on balanced diet is near zero. We did a survey and found out that 98.5% even do not know what a balanced diet is, even when food is the primary medicine for our body. At the same time, there are numerous concepts of nutrition in the medical literature. And if you scan through them, they appear complicated, theoretical, and difficult to practice. And we never get practical tips from any of these, and nowhere it is mentioned also. But the traditional doctors always speak of it and advocate about dietary changes. But that always boils down to avoiding one thing or other. And it never matched with the scientific principles that we learned. As I mentioned before, these are the problems that we face. 98.5% of our people do not even know what it is. What is a balanced diet? This is from a survey that we have done. At the same time, the same people have enough and more wrong concepts on diet. Almost all of us eat only for taste or appetite, and that too to fill the stomach. Overeating with carbohydrate containing food has become universal unless they are starving. There are no clear guidelines in textbooks, and doctors also do not bother about it. There's no discussion on what is lifestyle and what is good lifestyle. In fact, in medical schools, we just say mixed diet. That was enough in most of the examinations. The practical tips on diet were never discussed. Even though it is discussed, it is incomplete. And the saddest part is nutritional deficiencies are diagnosed only with blood levels. When in reality, you can get it simply by a good dietary history, the possibilities you can predict, and the features you can look for. But no one is taught how to elicit a proper dietary history. And the doctors are even reluctant to discuss balanced diet. Maybe they are ignorant also. This was a studies that we had done, 3 separate studies, impact of weight reduction by diet and lifestyle on diabetes, NASH, and hypertension. These are 3 separate studies. I'll just give the summary of those studies before I go to other aspects of the talk. What we concluded was diet and lifestyle modification can genuinely achieve weight reduction. And it can result in reversal of diabetes, NASH, hypertension, dyslipidemia, even polycythemia in one go, because some of these patients have all these. If it is a young female, there may be even PCOS. They all need individualized attention to change the diet and lifestyle. Medications alone for each disorder is a wrong approach. That's what we focus on. We give one medicine for hypertension, some medicines for diabetes, and venesection for polycythemia. Hyperuricemia is treated with some drug. But when all these are due to wrong diet and lifestyle, we actually miss the forest for the tree. There is an urgent need to create awareness on non-communicable diseases and their prevention, because it is increasing in pandemic proportions. All subjects studied were having faulty dietary habits. Increased caloric intake and inadequate vegetables, fruits, and even protein was noticed in majority of them. Another point we observed was that whether a person is overweight or not is to be individualized. One should not go by the BMI features. Even 1 kilogram excess from the normal weight matters to predispose to these illnesses. Because the predisposition to develop diabetes, NASH, hypertension, or dyslipidemia varies from individual to individual. We had seen some of the patients with a BMI as low as 18, and in those patients, the target BMI can be 17 to achieve the objective of reducing the diabetes, controlling diabetes or NASH or dyslipidemia. Weight reduction were achieved in all those patients who are compliant, and those who achieved weight reduction only were included in the studies that we have done. All the 3 studies were done on, final results were analyzed based on people who achieved weight reduction. 47% of all initially enrolled people, total number is not taken, only 47% of the enrolled people lost weight, and they were only taken for studies. And the weight loss was 6 to 11 kilograms. The mean weight before intervention was 73 among them, and after intervention, the mean weight was 63 kilograms. We used only balanced diet in achieving weight loss, not the keto diet or the rigorous dieting programs. In the fatty liver study, we found that the history of weight gain was the best screening test to diagnose NASH, because if there is fat accumulation in the body, part of it will accumulate in the liver also. And that is a first and foremost point. Then if you get an elevated SGPT, it is definite. And we've observed in them that consumption of high carbohydrate and even high protein diet in some of them. They all had junk foods, inadequate vegetables, and decreased fruits intake. If a person has palpable liver and has history of weight gain, it indicates the possibility of NASH. Ultrasound is a good investigation, but it's not needed for screening for NASH, because History of weight gain is more sensitive and more specific. And weight reduction by diet and lifestyle modification, in fact, normalized SGPT levels and the patient's well-being. In the diabetes reversal study, the mean fasting blood sugar before intervention was 174 milligram per deciliter. Post-intervention in 6 months, it was sustained at below 132. Statistically significant reduction was achieved. We could stop all the medicines, including insulin. Only metformin and diet management were continued in them, even on continued follow-up. 38 subjects out of 50 had normalization of blood sugars. All had uncontrolled blood sugars and were on multiple drugs. 12 of them had a high fasting blood sugar after weight reduction, but after stopping all drugs. Except the high fasting blood sugar, weight reduction was achieved, and we could stop all the drugs, but the blood sugar values were lesser than the previous values. All of them are continued only with metformin. No insulin was used. No sulfonylureas were continued. Even these 12 subjects had a sense of well-being after weight loss, in spite of their fasting blood sugars remaining high. So the primary concern should be weight reduction and not the blood sugars. That's a point we need to know in diabetes control. So how to achieve compliance with lifestyle modification? Patient non-compliance to dietary advice is a major obstacle in the study, but that was overcome by regular personal counseling sessions, encouraging frequent follow-up visits. Initially, we ensured that they come for a 1 week follow-up. Later on, when they were compliant, they were asked to come at 1 month interval. Maintaining a good rapport with subjects and their spouses. Good physician-patient relationship and constant motivation is the key. It should be implemented in the primary healthcare itself, rather than referring all the diabetic patients to referral centers and endocrinology doctors. 90% of the patients had BMI above normal. The 10% who had normal BMI definitely had a history of weight gain. Unless we ask for it, we will miss it. But 32% of the patients, in spite of all these, refuse any history of weight gain. But on careful scrutiny only, we found out that they had weight gain, only on measurement and comparison with the previous weight. They will not admit that they had put on weight unless you carefully scrutinize it. Because they fail to notice their weight gain, because most of them believe that being obese is meant being healthy. Some of them fail to realize that they are overweight or obese because they don't know that obesity itself is a malnutrition. They compare with the people around them. That's why they fail to notice it. And the change in blood pressure noticed with the lifestyle changes was like this. 83%, that is 50 out of 60, showed a decrease in blood pressure. The mean initial systolic blood pressure was 154 millimeter. Follow-up mean was 137. The mean initial diastolic was 91. Follow-up after 6 months was 83, sustained. And weight reduction could reverse or cure hypertension in 29% of them, completely stopping the medicines. The change of hypertension medications after weight reduction was summarized like this. In 32%, multiple drugs were used, and that was reduced to single medicine. In 15%, the dose could be reduced. In 22%, antihypertensive medicine could be stopped completely. In 7% of the newly diagnosed patients, they were managed without drugs. In short, 29% of them, we could reverse the hypertension. In 25%, there was no change in drug therapy, but they had better blood pressure controls. The wrong dietary practices noticed in the study in hypertensives also were carbohydrate intake was excess in 82%. Food meant carbohydrates only. In all these conditions, that is the truth. Most of them took dry fruits in addition. Dry fruits actually gives calories only. And all of them consider potato, cassava, tapioca, yam, all as vegetables only. This is a very sad state of affairs. They do not even know what is a vegetable. Excess carbohydrate intake was associated with a higher systolic blood pressure. And this association was statistically significant. Only 8% were taking vegetables 2 times a day. In fact, it is 3 to 4 servings per day. And many vegetarians were not taking vegetables at all. And the undue fear of pesticides and insecticides had aggravated the issue of vegetable and fruits consumption. Proper insight regarding the nature of vegetables were given to all these patients. And they were also even given suggestion on home growing of vegetables whenever possible. To many patients, vegetarian meant avoiding fish, meat, and egg. So all these were clearly taught to the subjects. Then only you can change the diet and lifestyle. Coming to the use of junk foods, fast foods, and fried food, we found that all of them are using traditional and homemade junk foods, chocolates, ice cream, biscuits, carbonated beverages, and high saturated and trans fat containing fast foods, high salt containing, but no essential nutrients at all in any of these fast foods. Consumption is made inevitable by the marketing strategies that we see because of consumerism. People are unaware of the extra calories from these snacking habits. The association between salted food intake and initial systolic blood pressure was found to be statistically significant. So we created awareness on awareness against taking junk foods and fast foods and fried food. We told that the substances like these contain preservatives, artificial colors, and flavors, and they're harmful to the body. Some of them develop autoimmune diseases as well because of that. Once this is revealed to them, many of them stopped it. Most of them stopped it. The same people who are consuming deep fried food as well. Deep frying of meat resulted in loss of protein structure, and even carcinogens. Nitrosamines are produced by deep frying of fish and meat, especially when using repeatedly. The oils are used repeatedly. 15% were consuming these up to 2 to 3 times per day. Avoiding the habit of buying and gifting and storing and snacking bakery foodstuffs were absolutely discouraged. All these need to be addressed if you want to achieve weight reduction. We found that protein intake in the study subjects were inadequate in 48%. 27% were taking them in excess, and that resulted in hyperuricemia. Most people did not know about the proteins in the diet. Lack of animal proteins is an important reason that we found for B12 deficiency. Some were taken in excess, and that resulted in hyperuricemia and joint pains. This was a study on reversal of diabetes. It is available on the net. I'm just showing it because if you want, you can access it. This is the one reversal of fatty liver, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. So now let me tell what led to, let us discuss what led to, what actually led to the conditions like diabetes, hypertension, NASH, dyslipidemia, polycythemia, metabolic syndrome, hyperuricemia. It's actually a package of diseases resulting from wrong diet and lifestyle habits. So we need to study all of them together. In young females, it includes PCOS as well. This patient I had discussed once before. This was a 25-year-old male. He noticed recent onset fatigue and 5 kilogram weight loss, and the blood sugar was found 300 milligram. The weight at that point was 68 kilogram and 161 centimeter. That means he was 73 kilogram. His height was 161 centimeter. He had been having sedentary work for 9 years. But comparing to his father, he's 65 years, 52 kilogram only, with a height of 155 centimeter. He had no diabetes. There was no family history of diabetes in the family. And in this patient, with weight reduction, we could reverse his diabetes, hypertension, NASH, and dyslipidemia in one go. This was my first patient seen 20 years ago. And with that actually gave me the insight into these issues better. If you look at the etiology of diabetes mellitus, you have two mechanisms, type 1 mechanism and type 2 mechanism. They are not separate diseases, in fact. Type 2 is the diabetes that we are trying to control. You cannot reverse type 1 once it is developing. But type 1 mechanism includes beta cell damage by toxins, infections, autoimmune mechanism, malnutrition, or because of prematurity and low beta cell mass at birth. And they have low insulin levels to begin with, or even absent insulin when the disease fully manifests. This is the type 1 mechanism. Type 2 mechanism is purely an issue of insulin resistance. And it is due to overeating, decreased physical activity, and unmanaged stress. There is a beta cell overuse, and finally the beta cells get exhausted, but they have normal beta cell mass. And hyperinsulinemia is the cornerstone of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. But some patients could be having two mechanisms operating simultaneously. But anyway, when we are talking about reversal of diabetes, we are talking about type 2 diabetes, not type 1. If you have a diabetic like this, emaciated diabetic with the tuberculosis, they always have type 1 diabetes, even if they are of older age. The reasons, as I mentioned before, are premature birth, low birth weight, low beta cell mass, and they might develop infections on the pancreas like mumps infection or other viral infections, or even tuberculosis sometimes. We had seen pancreatic tuberculosis or autoimmunity. And by the time the pancreas is completely damaged and they develop type 1 diabetes, nobody can reverse it. But we need to address maternal nutrition and neonatal nutrition to address type 1 diabetes. That's a different issue. We are focusing on type 2 diabetes, where insulin resistance is the problem. But insulin resistance is not a primary phenomenon. Each instance of carbohydrate intake in any form, even as fast food, leads to an insulin surge. When you have excess carbohydrate intake, there is maximum insulin surge, especially if it is multiple times. So this gives rise to a situation that the body gets more fuel than the body can handle. That itself is an insulin resistance. If you are trying to lift a weight more than what you can handle, it is an abnormal situation. The excess carbohydrate that you take, if it is not utilized, is deposited everywhere. And that is what obesity means. And that's part of it is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. The lack of exercise, because exercise is important for insulin, the glucose entry into the muscles. When there is lack of exercise, there is peripheral insulin resistance as well. That is, physical inactivity leads to peripheral insulin resistance. And most of these patients have unmanaged stress, which releases counter-regulatory hormones, which antagonize the action of insulin. So these are the three causes for insulin resistance: eating more than what you need, and decreased physical activity, and unmanaged stress. And in these people, always there is increased free fatty acid and dyslipidemia. There's no point using statins in them to control this dyslipidemia. This is the problem that happens. Excess carbohydrate consumption leads to insulin surge. Repeated insulin surges, there is always hyperinsulinemia. And with increased insulin, lipolysis is inhibited. Already they have excess fat deposited in the body, but they can never use it because this fat is deposited in the body for use when you are fasting. There is no fasting at all, and lipolysis does not take place. In fact, each time the insulin enhances lipogenesis. That is the action of insulin. And finally, the beta cells, which goes on secreting insulin, get exhausted after several years. And that's the time where the type 2 diabetics may require insulin. And that's the time where they start manifesting diabetes even. So it is the problem of overeating, physical inactivity, and unmanaged stress. And this condition not only leads to diabetes, the same problem leads to hypertension, NASH, polycythemia, hyperuricemia, metabolic syndrome, and PCOS in young females. And ultimately, due to hypertension, diabetes, you get CKD, and osteoarthrosis most often is due to hyperuricemia. Cancers also occur in these people. In fact, rest of the dietary habits will decide what kind of manifestation each one gets. So we need to break this vicious cycle with patient education and social empowerment. The overeating habit, physical inactivity, unmanaged stress, and insulin antagonism, we need to break because it is a result of consumerism. Consumerism and non-communicable disease relation we need to study because this is what promotes overeating, not just physical inactivity. Generates stress promoted by market forces, the advertisements and reality shows and business motives of the people selling unwanted things. The fast foods and wrong foods give toxins too. So consumerism is at the background of all the non-communicable diseases. Children are primed to eat the wrong foods. Maybe they are even made for living to eat because they do not probably develop a social sense. It's all due to poor primary education. So we need to act on good primary education also to change this trend. Man, this I had already mentioned that man is the only animal which does not know what to eat and what not to eat. Women of the house end up eating excess food. They literally convert their stomach into a waste basket to finish off the leftover food. Or they may use food as a symbol of affection to feed their relatives to show their affection. This should never happen actually. And finally, they have a combination of problems with the metabolic syndrome, PCOS, hypertension, NASH, polycythemia, hyperuricemia, and they end up with CKD, CLD, and then we need to go for dialysis and organ replacement and joint replacement and chemotherapies. All these are the end result of wrong diet and lifestyle habits. We found that in another study, we found that if non-alcoholic fatty liver occurs in first degree relatives of patients, that means it is the result of same abnormal diet and dietary habits in the family and not due to a genetic disorder. This is the issue that we need to know. Malnutrition and consumer is a deadly combination. The same people who do not eat a balanced diet are exposed to all the wrong habits and excess carbohydrate intake, fried food, junk food, fast food, and they are the people who get all the diseases as a package, including infections in them. We can summarize all the etiology of all diabetes and all non-communicable diseases in this heading. As I mentioned, overeating, physical inactivity, prolonged unmanaged stress, toxins through diet and other sources, lack of balanced diet, and infections as a result of lack of balanced diet causing damage to organs, including liver and kidneys, autoimmunity occurring due to several toxins. And because of all these, sometimes genetic mutations may occur. Once a mutation occurs, the disease may manifest in that person itself as cancers, or it may be transmitted to next generation. And that is what some of these genetic diseases are actually due to this issue only. So finally, we need to know that to counter all these, or to reverse diabetes, or to prevent diabetes, we need to eat a balanced diet only for regular use. And that should only be used even for weight reduction, rather than going for shortcuts like keto diet. I can proudly say that I am allowed to talk to you today only because of weight reduction of 10 kilogram 21 years ago. Otherwise, I would not have been alive. It's such an important issue to know that if you have excess weight, you need to reduce it. And then I will tell you, before I tell about balanced diet, what made me confident to talk on balanced diet. I did not know anything about balanced diet till I was 45 years of age. This clearly shows our medical education does not properly teach. I was actually the best outgoing student of my batch. So if I did not know, then it clearly tells the medical education does not teach you about proper diet and lifestyle. And I had the unique opportunity to work in a museum of diseases. You know that our Department of Medicine has, you name any disease, we have seen it there. And even the place where I did my post-graduation, that is PGI Chandigarh, that also has a similar situation. And I was closely studying the dietary and lifestyle habits of a variety of patients. And I realized that they all had multiple nutritional deficiencies. And I started studying healthy and elderly individuals. And in fact, I started studying them very closely, those who lived beyond 90s and 100s. And I also traveled across the world to wherever I went, I studied their diet and lifestyle and the health systems they had. And I had been experimenting on diet and lifestyle for the last 2 decades or more than that. And right now I have an almost complete concept on balanced diet and lifestyle. But maybe I am not benefited completely, but it has to be transferred to the next generation. And I'm comparing all the goodness in all the information that I've collected. And there is a need for disseminating it. Otherwise, human species will not be will be extinct in another 100 years. The concept of balanced diet actually is that I have or I'm presenting is the result of a lifetime of observations. It all started in 1991 when 1,500 people attended a marriage function in Calicut and only 150 of them developed typhoid. That opened my eyes. They all consume the same food, same water, but only 150 developed typhoid. That means they have some difference. The body immunity is an important issue. In 1993, I noticed vitamin D deficiency in patients with tuberculosis. And I was sure that tuberculosis is due to malnutrition. And then the landmark study on vitamin D deficiency was done in 2000, but they hesitated to publish it, this being the first study in the world. And finally, it got published in 2002. And then I had numerous studies on B12 deficiency. And in fact, my own research works were almost always focused on diet and nutrition. This was a landmark study on tuberculosis, which clearly said that vitamin D deficiency is an issue of malnutrition and not primarily a sunlight exposure issue. This was a review article in Medicine Update 2012. And the same article, review article published in another journal. And we had another review article on tuberculosis control India must refocus on nutrition with my two PGs from Calicut. And vitamin D deficiency in hypertension also, because almost all of them, whether it is hypertension, diabetes, or cancer, they have vitamin D deficiency because they do not consume a balanced diet. And then the studies on B12 deficiency. This article also is available on the online with B12 deficiency and my name, you can access it. Now coming to balanced diet. This is a concept of balanced diet that I have been teaching my students and patients now. Imagine this as a plate at any meal. The most important is water, but at least give space for one glass of water. And the major portion of one plate has to be for vegetables only. But you should know what are the vegetables. The potatoes, yams are not vegetables. Even raw banana is not a vegetable, only its skin is a vegetable. Inside it is carbohydrate. So it should be high fiber vegetable only. Others are actually not vegetables. The carbohydrate containing food is not a vegetable. And they should be fresh, seasonal fruits possibly, and then adequate protein and very little space for carbohydrate. Carbohydrate should be seen as the fuel for the fuel tank. You need to consume only if you have some physical activities. If you don't have any physical activities, you don't have to even consume carbohydrate separately because there will be enough carbohydrate in these vegetables and foods. That is enough. So we need to consume a balanced diet every time we eat. And that's the most important good lifestyle habit to be taught, because food is a primary medicine. How can we go on living without knowing what we should eat? High fiber vegetables and fresh fruits and natural proteins will provide all these. We don't have to go for supplementation unless it is too late. This is the balanced diet. It has 5 components. A vegetarian diet has cereals, pulses is the source of protein, and adequate vegetables, fresh fruits, and water. The proportion between cereals and pulses can be 3:1 if a person is doing physical activities. If there is no physical activities, it can be very little carbohydrate and the pulses can be 2:1. Proportion can be 2:1. But with increasing physical activity, the cereals can be increased. Cereals can be replaced with tubers like tapioca, yam, and potatoes. And the pulses can be replaced with fish, meat, egg, curd, or mushroom. But avoid wrong combinations. The roots and tubers should not be combined with pulses. Cereals, if you are taking as a source of carbohydrate, any source of protein is all right. But if you are taking roots and tubers, including jackfruit, the protein has to be a complete protein. It has to come from fish, meat, egg, curd, or mushroom. One should always identify the sources of carbohydrate and the calorie content. As I mentioned before, rice, wheat, ragi, maize, oats, millet, none of them is superior. Can go with any protein. You can go for pulses or any of the complete proteins like fish, meat, egg, or meat. Fish, meat, egg, or a mushroom. If you are using potato, Chinese potato, yams, tapioca, jackfruit, or any of the roots and tubers, one should combine only with a complete protein, not pulses. Because this wrong combination you can see always. How much protein you should take? It's difficult to tell them how much, but it is 20 to 30 grams per meal. If the protein requirement is high, 30 grams per meal, you can say that it is equal to the size of one egg if you're using a complete protein. And for an increased protein requirement, 2x size protein can be given. And if you are using pulses for regular use, 2x size uncooked pulses can be used. Avoid milk as a source of protein, use it only as curd, because milk is never a balanced diet and it is not good for tiredness, because some people with diabetes may be consuming it. Because you must know that there is a molecular mimicry to beta cell protein. The milk protein has got a molecular mimicry. So if by chance there is some undigested milk is absorbed by endocytosis, it can produce antibodies which can damage the beta cell. So there is another, that is another reason. Anyway, if you take whole milk as a food, it will lead to several nutritional problems in children and adults. So now I use whole milk as a source of protein. The high fiber vegetables should be there with every meal. They should be taken raw or half boiled. Do not overcook. Should not, the fear of pesticides should not be an issue. Make it the first thing to eat. If you eat vegetables and fruits the first thing, you can actually reduce the carbohydrate even without being aware of it. Every time we eat, fresh fruits should be there. Ideally, it should be fresh, whole, and seasonal. The size of an apple or an orange can be given as a approximate estimate of fruits at every meal. It is always good to go for an assortment of 3 or 4 vegetables and fruits if possible. So for the vegetables also, it is always good to go for an assortment of 3 or 4 vegetables, which that principle is called rainbow eating, different colors at different times. But do not go for dry or boiled banana or canned juice or cooked foods. Ideally, it is also taken before food. And in case one has to snack on something, rather than going for fast food, one can use fruits as a snack also. When will you use fruit juice? If at all, it should be used without milk or sugar. It is for the edentulous people only, not the people with proper dentition should now be using fruit juices. Vegetables can be made the major meal or major bulk in any meal. In fact, one can go for a full meal with vegetables, different colors. You can add some oil, and you can add green chili, and you can add lime juice, so that it becomes tasty. And you can even add fruits to this. And if one wants, you can even add some of the complete proteins like egg, fish, or meat to this, and so that it will become a complete meal. You don't have to go for carbohydrate at all unless you need it. If you are on a weight reducing diet, this is the ideal diet for them. Any oil can be used. Any edible oil can be used to improve the taste of food. And if you are using raw vegetables, adding oil could destroy the bacteria too while eating them raw. You can go for coconut oil. Olive oil is given superiority only because it remains oil in very low temperatures. Otherwise, it is not superior. Coconut oil is enough for us. You can use even ghee or any of them. But the only condition is the oil should be liquid at room temperature. Otherwise, it will not be uniformly spread. But avoid using oil for frying food. You don't have to add extra oil. It's not a mandatory item because whatever food that we eat contains some oil. But you can add them for taste or to destroy the germs when you are eating them raw. But count on the calorie factor when you are adding oil, because the 1 gram of oil or fat has about 3 times calorie content than as compared to carbohydrate. To avoid overeating, one must have a plan. Now fill the stomach. Half the capacity of the stomach only should be filled each time, and give 1 glass space for 1 glass of water. And majority of the space has to be occupied by vegetables, then fruits also. And this very little space, 20 to 30 grams for protein, and last and least important, only carbohydrate. When you are on a weight reducing diet, even this area can be given to vegetables. This is a plan that we should advocate this patients on weight reducing diet. Never go for a refill. you know how much you need. So never go for a refill is an important advice to be given. And fill only 1/3 the stomach capacity, including water only is the half the capacity. And vegetables should be the major component, and maximum 3 times only, never more than 3 times a day. How to avoid overeating and weight gain? Some more tips you can give: eat only when you are hungry. Stop eating once the hunger is relieved, and never eat to full stomach. Even 2 meals a day is more ideal if you are on a weight reducing plan. And even if it is 3 meals, the last meal should be at least 4 hours before going to bed. Suppose there is a delay in taking evening meal, never have meal and go to bed immediately. It's better to skip that meal. Now, and that is a very important advice to be given to them. The last meal should be at least 4 hours before going to bed. Intermittent fasting or fasting 12 hours every day is a very good advice or plan for weight reduction or prevention of weight gain. This helps in weight loss, and it also upregulates autophagy. That intermittent fasting or everyday fasting for 12 hours. Suppose you have the dinner at 7 o'clock and breakfast after 7 a.m. in the morning. There's a 12 hours of fasting every day, and that definitely helps in upregulating autophagy. This is a review article in our New England Journal of Medicine regarding the importance of autophagy in human diseases. Autophagy is a cellular mechanism of or sequestration of unwanted cytoplasmic components or the dying components. These structures are subsequently fused with the lysosomes, and then they are removed by the macrophages. Defective autophagy is implicated in all diseases. It all depends on nutrition, including vitamin D. And finally, defective autophagy is at the root of infections, autoimmune disorders, cancers, and even metabolic disorders. And it is also found to be dysregulated in degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. So it's an important issue to be recognized. Remember that autophagy can influence regulation of inflammation and immune system function. It regulates innate and adaptive immune responses. Even human pathogens are degraded in vitro using autophagy. All microorganisms, intracellular microorganisms, can be degraded by the autophagy process. But look at the sentence in that review article. Autophagy is upregulated during starvation and aerobic exercise. This is what we should focus on, rather than going after the genes regulating autophagy. And this is the most important point that I was trying to mention by saying that intermittent fasting or 12 hours fasting every day definitely help the immune function, immune mechanisms. It can protect us from several diseases. Now, coming to the patient education and diet and lifestyle management in non-communicable diseases, this is the point that patient education is the most important. There's no point just prescribing a medicine. That needs patience and rapport with the patients. And it is possible only with primary care doctors or family doctors. But anybody can develop that habit. But unless you are in that practice, patients are not going to be benefited. So that is why India is suffering most, because there are no family doctors with a rapport who are interested in this kind of management of the patients, the holistic management of the patients. It is considered unscientific by the some immature people. If they all focus on these medications, insulin, OHA, antihypertensive, statins, they forget about all these diet and exercise, lifestyle, and stress management. These are the major issues to be addressed, not other medications. These should be avoided as far as possible by proper patient education. A balanced diet in moderation will prevent or control or reverse all the diseases which I mentioned, type 2 diabetes, NASH, PCOS including. So that needs behavior changes to avoid overeating. Avoid eating food for fun is an important message to be given to each patient. They should know that once you tell them, that creates an impact on their mind. No other animal does that. Avoid using food as a symbol of affection. You should tell that if you offer one more chapati or one more idli, you are actually serving poison. That kind of strong message has to be given. Do not offer food unnecessarily to anyone, especially the carbohydrates. Offer food only when a person is hungry or starving. And do not gift any carbohydrate-rich fast foods. Instead, tell them to gift only fresh fruits and vegetables. And these kind of messages will stay in their mind. And that's the only way to make it behavior changes as possible, only by such messages. While planning weight reduction, we need to decide the normal weight or the desired weight which we want to achieve, which differs from person to person. But please do not go by the BMI standards, especially that is made from USA. They do not know the normal weights. The lowest weight after completing skeletal maturity is a normal weight for every individual. Sometimes you will be surprised to know that that weight may be having a BMI of 17 only. That is a normal for that particular individual. If a person is by chance obese from childhood onwards, then only you go for the BMI. That too, go for the lowest BMI possible. For that reason, weight recording at each visit is the most important investigation to be done by doctors managing patients. But use the same weighing machine to compare the weights. We should also identify other targets in management because they have a package of problems. It should be, maybe it may not be just diabetes alone. There may be NASH, hypertension, and some of them have high hemoglobin and PCV, polycythemia. So it is not the normal fasting blood sugar that is our objective. And HbA1c is not to be, need not be used even. It's only a research tool. I haven't used HbA1c throughout my life, except occasionally for research purposes. Avoid the hypoglycemic episodes. That is our number one objective. In any patient, they should never have a single hypoglycemic episode. And they should never put on weight while on management of diabetes. The feeling of well-being is a very important management strategy and objective. Whether the patient is symptom-free or not is important. Whether the fasting blood sugar is normal or not is another objective, as mentioned. But suppose sometimes you find fasting blood sugar high, but the patient has achieved weight loss, what to do then? Should not hike the dose of medicine, adjust on the carbohydrate intake only. If the patient has a feeling of well-being, that weight loss, if you want to sustain, do not give any of the hypoglycemic agents. That weight loss is more desirable than slightly high fasting blood sugar in such patients. We need to catch them early to prevent or reverse diabetes or hypertension or polycythemia. We need to convey the need to reduce weight for genuine control of the disease. And there is no diabetic diet. There is only a natural diet in moderation. We need to discuss with the patient and family and the spouse together. In fact, we need to modify the diet of the family. It is not possible to modify the diet of a single person alone. Finally, through the family, we are trying to modify the social practices as well. And always stress on the carbohydrate restriction without compromising quality of the diet. For all this purpose, we need to take a proper dietary history from each patient. And that should be an average of 1 week or an average of 1 month dietary history. What all they eat at each time, that is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Do they eat any fast food, junk foods, or fried foods? If so, how often? Frequency and proportion of each item has to be found out. Change their concept about balanced diet by giving, I use that picture which I had shown to educate them. This is how I take a dietary history. Vegetables, if you do not ask what, they will not, we will not know what they are eating. Sometimes it may be potato. So that is why we need to find out which vegetable they are eating and how often. And how much also is important. Fruits, how often and what form. Sometimes it may be dry dates. So we need to find out whether it is fresh fruits or not. Protein also, the type and frequency we need to find out. Some of them may be taking protein powder instead of natural proteins. Breakfast items for a week we need to study and estimate the availability of substances that should be present in a balanced diet. Similarly, lunch for 1 week or dinner items for 1 week. And water intake, how much has to be found out. Snacks, how often and what all. Ice cream, sweets, whether they take or not. Other fast food items, fried food items, all need to be individually asked for to find out whether there is any abnormalities in dietary habits. And we also need to address all the wrong concepts about diet. They may be coming with a regular checking of cholesterol values, which is a foolish idea. Most of them come with a fasting lipid profile. If you ask them what is balanced diet, they do not know. Feasting and snacking is allowed, but the same people avoid the egg yolk. Egg yolk is not the reason for cholesterol. Cholesterol comes from the excess carbohydrate. Most people have the feeling that diabetes is due to eating sugar or rice. In fact, this is a wrong attitude which has to be addressed right from beginning itself. Most of them food means only rice-based diet. And they may be going for millets sometimes or jackfruit and eating in excess. Almost all of them believe that fruits are harmful in diabetes and they are considered as sweets. So this has to be changed. They need fruits regularly. But fruits does not mean fruit juice or dry fruits or boiled banana or fried banana. In India, people consider rice as the cause for diabetes. But in USA, people consider wheat as a cause for diabetes. Both are foolish ideas. It's a quantity that matters. And many have started replacing it with the jackfruit or millets to cure diabetes. Oats will reduce cholesterol is another misconception. In fact, it will not reduce anybody's cholesterol. Pulses and potatoes produce gas is another misconception. And they don't take pulses for that reason. In fact, the gas or dyspepsia is due to decreased intake of vegetables. And if you tell them to take proteins regularly, some of them go for protein powders. It has to be discouraged. Now I will give some 3 case scenarios. This was a 40-year-old male doctor diagnosed as polycythemia rubra vera some 15 years ago. In fact, there was no splenomegaly. The hemoglobin was 18 gram and PCV was 54%. You can see that the total count, differential count, and platelet counts are normal. This cannot be polycythemia rubra vera by any chance, except in some patients. But during the early stages, they may present like that. But this patient was investigated extensively. Even erythropoietin was found normal. That is why it was diagnosed as polycythemia rubra vera, and he was advised hydroxyurea. JAK2 luckily came negative. JAK2 can be positive in some of them, and the uric acid was high. In fact, the problem was weight gain of 10 kilogram in the last few years, and that led to a chronic hyperventilation, and that was the cause of polycythemia. Such patients could be having NASH, diabetes, or hypertension, or hyperuricemia, all of them together. So in fact, after weight reduction, he has a normal hemoglobin in PCV for the last 15 years. In fact, you get maximum benefit in newly diagnosed diabetics. Stop the sulfonylureas and insulin when you attempt weight reduction. Do not attempt weight reduction with the hypoglycemic drugs. Use only metformin and instruct them to take it only after food, because they may be believing that metformin also has to be taken before food. Always avoid other diabetic medications like alpha glucosidase inhibitors and incretin-based drugs, and even the renal threshold modifiers when you are attempting weight reduction. You don't need any of these drugs. But insulin may be added as a last resort when some patients may be having a combination of type 1 and type 2 mechanism operating together. That's a lean type 2 diabetics. Anyway, you try to achieve weight loss, but at least make sure that they do not gain weight at least. Never use sulfonylureas in overweight diabetics. This is an important message to keep in mind. None of the overweight diabetics should be on a sulfonylurea drug. This has to be a practice which has to be widely practiced. Everyone has to be made aware of it. Use only metformin in them. Reassure that metformin will not produce hypoglycemia. That is one advice you need to give. Otherwise, they'll think that when reducing food like that, they may go into hypoglycemia. Whenever they feel tired, they may go for some carbohydrate intake. So that has to be clearly given as an advice before attempting weight reduction. And always, while on metformin, anticipate B12 deficiency, because it will prevent B12 absorption. This is one of the reasons for the peripheral neuropathy. So they need to be supplemented with B12 tablets, not along with the metformin, when separately. And never use PPIs in diabetics, because that will prevent absorption of B12 and iron. You can have some deviations occasionally, but plan it. Suppose somebody is forced to consume a sweet dish like porridge or an ice cream, rarely sometimes, that person has to minus the next carbohydrate meal. or he or she has to compensate by doing extra exercise. And weight recording every day helps to assess these. And they should be told that they should never compare with others when they are attempting weight reduction. Another case scenario, a 24-year-old male who was 78 kilogram with onset of diabetes, it became 69. His height was 176, and he looks lean by any standards because of his high height of 176, but a BMI was 22. This person was on glimepiride 1 milligram BD and metformin 500 milligram BD, but blood sugars were never controlled. He looks apparently normal, lean to most of us because majority of us are overweight. And he also had bulky, foul-smelling stools. And there was calcific pancreatitis on evaluation. That means he had exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. In fact, it was type 1 and type 2 diabetes together. But on inquiry, I found that his original weight was 56 kilogram at 20 years of age. And that is his normal weight. So I decided to reduce his weight to below 60. And he also had features of B12 deficiency like premature graying of hair. So I stopped his glimepiride because with glimepiride, you cannot reduce weight. You should not attempt also. Metformin alone was used 1000 milligram BID, and he was given B12 injections. Tablets will not work in such patients because B12 absorption will not occur in pancreatic insufficiency. And last seen in April 21, he was totally asymptomatic after 7 kilogram weight loss with an RBS of 88 and BMI now is 20. It was 22 in the beginning. So you can achieve the target weight has to be individualized. That's the point I wanted to tell. Another case scenario, 52-year-old female, widow, senior government official, 156 centimeter and 56 kg with a BMI of 23. She has diabetes of 10 years. She was on glimepiride 2 milligram, 110, that is 4 milligram, metformin 1000 milligram BD, voglibos, SGLTR, insulin. Altogether, the cost of medicine was around 5,000 rupees per month. And the blood sugars were never controlled. And her SGPT was 61. In spite of BMI of this, she has NASH. She was depressed, anxious, and always stressed. And she used to get hypoglycemic episodes in between. And going to her dietary history, she never, almost rarely, the meat intake was very rare. Vegetables were very little and no fruits at all because they were told that fruits are harmful in diabetes. And even water intake was reduced. And these are things we need to address. So what we need to do is to manage the patient, not the fasting blood sugar or HbA1c. In fact, she was so stressed because her daughter's marriage was nearing and she was unable to meet the deadlines at work being a senior government official. And she wanted to take VRS. In fact, she came to get a medical certificate for that. The unmanaged stress that she had led to insulin resistance as well. So the patient had NASH, coexisting B12 folic acid and vitamin D deficiency. These need to be addressed when you manage the patient, without which they will not recover completely. So what was done in this lady? Stopped all medications, including insulin, put only on metformin. It's not an OHA. It will not produce hypoglycemia. Remember that. She was given B12, vitamin D, and folic acid. The problems were due to these deficiencies and inability to cope with the stress. And 1 kilogram weight loss, she became normal and she did not take VRS, and she went on to work. And review on 21/4/2021, the fasting blood sugar was still high but less than original, and she was doing well. And this month only, she came for last review, and everything is normal with a 50 kilogram weight, and she is doing fine. Normal blood sugar. Now she is due for a promotion, and she is happily going to take it up. Look at this man, whom I had seen some 20 years ago, weighing 130 kilogram, 165 centimeter. He had NASH, hypertension, diabetes mellitus, hyperuricemia, and polycythemia. And unfortunately, this patient was getting glibenclamide 1 TDS. This will never help him. It will actually, we are adding oil to fire. The glibenclamide will produce episodes of hypoglycemia. Patient will go on eating, and all the conditions that he is suffering from will increase. So how to achieve weight loss with the total restriction of carbohydrate? You can even go in the patient whom I mentioned just now. You can go for a total restriction of carbohydrate. That is after stopping all hypoglycemic agents Give him only high fiber vegetables as the only meal, but you should make it tasty and appealing. You need to give practical advice for that. And add one source of complete protein, only fish, meat, egg, curd, or mushroom. One should not take pulses as a source of protein when you are skipping completely the carbohydrates. And fruits every time they eat, and water 2 to 3 liter the last meal before 7 p.m. at least. This advice will help weight reduction in such individuals. And apply the same plan to all non-communicable diseases where you want to achieve weight reduction. You can achieve control of all diseases, including autoimmune disorders are helped when you attempt weight reduction. PCOS reverses, polycythemia reverses, NAFLD, if it is early to reverses, hypertension is reversed, diabetes is reversed, and you can prevent cancers, ischemic heart disease, and CVS including. But also we need to address the social aspects when we are dealing with such a management plan. We need to bring balanced diet as a social practice into the society. That is possible only with primary school teachers using the school health programs, which are supervised by the primary care doctors, the family doctors or general practitioners. Educate the medical students regarding these issues. There's no point talking about the calorie content and grams of protein without giving practical tips. So the family doctors are needed to educate the society on this. And we need good agricultural practices and reforms in agriculture to produce these essential items. And social empowerment is needed to improve the purchasing power of individuals. And only you cannot tell them to go and buy fruits and vegetables when their purchasing power is poor. And all food outlets has to be educated, including hotels, restaurants, hostels, everywhere. They all have to be educated on balanced diet. This kind of fast food have replaced the regular food habits. All are high calorie, sugary food, and we need to check the advertisements by celebrities. This is a serious threat to our health. These are health drinks, biscuits, cakes, protein powders, all ready to eat foods are fast foods only. None of them is needed for regular use. It may be used as a last resort when you don't have any access to any other food. And we should also tell them about the wrong combinations and the right combinations. These are the good or right combinations for breakfast and major meals. Idli dosa is good. It contains rice and pulse, urad bean. Appam with one dal, egg or fish or meat, one of them. The puttu, steamed rice with green gram or Bengal gram is very good. Puri with one dal or egg or any of or egg or curd, any of them. Chapati or roti with dal, egg or curd. Major meals can be the Kerala meals, the rice, sambar, avial, dal and curd is very good combination provided the carbohydrate content is very low. But the avial and vegetables, the thoran kind of things should be more. Chapati, roti with dal, curd or egg. Kanji and pyre of the Kerala meal is very good. Jackfruit can be taken as a major meal every time, every day throughout your life, provided you eat with the meat, fish, egg or curd. Tapioca also can be used similarly with meat, fish, egg or curd. These two should never be used with pulses. But make sure that fruits and vegetables and adequate water is there with every meal, and total quantity has to be half the capacity of the stomach. They should be cautioned about against the wrong menu also. Puri bhaji is a wrong combination. Both are just carbohydrates only. Appam with the potato stew is a wrong combination. Puttu with sugar or boiled banana is a wrong combination. Tapioca with the green gram, raw banana with the green gram, lunch with the rice and potato curry, rice with one of the yams, or jackfruit with pickle, tapioca with pickle and rice, junk foods, fried food, all are the wrong combinations, and they should be told very clearly about this. But also make sure that they get adequate water, 10 to 12 glasses of water, enough to produce 1,500 ml of urine. The when to take may be asked by some patients. You can tell if you want, you can take before, during, or after meals. But it should not be decided by thirst alone, because if you go by thirst alone, you may ignore thirst and finally end up taking decreased water. They must be given a concept about approximate water requirement per day. And adequate fresh air is equally important. Our patients are not aware of that. I see every day when I go to hospital, I find the patients admitted for fear of COVID. They are closing all the windows, using double mask without an AC room. They do not know the value of fresh air. They should be told about ventilation in the rooms. Only if your body is lean, then only you will get adequate oxygen. Because when the chest wall is thick, the compliance of the chest wall will be less. You will not get enough oxygen. Exercise also is essential to get adequate oxygen. But we need plants, trees, and forests to make available enough oxygen in the surroundings. Let us also modify other lifestyle habits. We need to study their activities over 24 hours, the type of exercise, the duration, the intensity, smoking, alcohol, and other drugs. Give tips on managing their stress, because unmanaged stress is one of the reasons for uncontrolled diabetes. And develop a stress management plan for doctors too. Otherwise, we will not be able to continue managing them. Let us learn to manage the non-communicable diseases rather than just treating them with medicines. And manage our stress for us or the patient by enjoying what we are doing, or tell them to enjoy what they are doing, or choose what they enjoy doing. Time management is equally important to avoid stress. Avoid smoking, alcohol, and overeating. All these are counterproductive in managing stress. These will adversely affect your capacity to manage stress. So eat less to manage stress. And balanced diet certainly helps in managing stress. Manage your stress also by adequate rest, adequate sleep, short naps when you're tired, taking a bath. Sometimes you can individualize depending on your plan, watching movie or listening to music or meditation for some people, or prayers. In fact, this is the only role for religion in healthcare, if at all, in managing your stress. And if they are not doing that, in fact, it is useless for human beings. Physical exercise also helps in managing stress. But exercise often helps not only manage stress, it will also provide us some vitamin D, but we need to provide places for it: footpaths, cycle paths, playgrounds. And people should be empowered for good lifestyle habits. We should know what is good lifestyle to tell them, and the administrators to tell them what is good lifestyle. We need to advocate that. And these are the good lifestyle habits: balanced diet every day, and that needs good agricultural practices. Avoid overeating. We need to give them tips. That needs family doctors. Otherwise, every doctor has to do it. Avoid all the junk foods and fast foods. We need to control the advertisements and sugar industry. Safety and adequacy of drinking water. We need to provide potable water through pipes. The Public Health Engineering Department has to come back, not the Water Authority. In India, the only city which claimed safe drinking water is Odisha, Puri. All other cities in India do not say that their water is safe for drinking, when even the neighboring country, Sri Lanka, has provided safe drinking water through pipes. Proper waste disposal habits, good waste management, physical exercise. We need to provide these facilities. No smoking and alcohol and addictions. Again, they need to be educated by family doctors. Plans for avoiding and protecting from accidents and injury. These are all lifestyle habits. I'm just telling all the lifestyle habits. Good posture at work, sleep, or travel. Again, educated by family doctors. Hygiene also. Personal hygiene, sleep hygiene, respiratory hygiene, sexual health, gender empowerment. Again, all these need the help of family doctors. Good work culture, loving the job that we are doing. And that is possible only by social security and good primary education. And measures to reduce stress. That is possible only with the social security, primary education, and with the help of family doctors. So these 13 items, which all together constitutes the good lifestyle habits, has to be made aware of, and the people should be empowered to practice it. Then only we can control all the lifestyle diseases. Now coming back to the last issue, that is in the scenario of COVID-19, what is the relation to the problem that we have been discussing? Remember that any infection is an interaction between agent, host, and environment. The agent may be entering the body, but it is a host which decides whether you will get a disease or not. That is why 90% are recovering. Most of them do not even have symptoms. Some have only mild symptoms. Very few only develop symptoms. And why only very few develop symptoms? It is a host factors, and that is decided by diet and lifestyle. It is not a long-term issue. It is a short-term issue. We should start today. No, do not postpone it for tomorrow. Let us practice good diet and lifestyle from day one onwards, that you come across a patient or a person seeking help. And that is the most important issue. And let us know who all are vulnerable to COVID-19. Those who do not eat a balanced diet and therefore are deficient in these vitamins. These are the number one issue: vitamin D, folic acid, B12, B6, vitamin C, and vitamin A. Not taking enough water, overweight or obese. And in fact, the lockdown has actually increased the people with overweight and obese. I have seen up to 22 kilograms of weight gain during this lockdown. Those who do not do any exercise, again, that also has increased during lockdown. Increased stress and are unable to manage it. Actually, the lockdowns were actually adding oil to fire. The stress has only increased, and there was nobody to reassure them properly. Smoking, tobacco, taking alcohol, all these can increase the vulnerability. And if a person has been exposed to all these vulnerable factors, he is already a patient. And if he develops COVID, definitely that person is not going to tolerate it properly. If a patient like this get COVID, can ventilators and oxygen plants save them always? Ventilators can save them very rarely sometimes, but we can always save them by modifying diet and lifestyle. Let us prevent them ending up in ICUs and ventilators. This is the issue doctors should take up rather than waiting for them to come and land up in hospitals, in the ICUs, and pairing with the ventilators. So take-home messages of my talk for the last 40-45 minutes is: we can prevent or reverse type 2 diabetes, hypertension, PCOS, NASH, and polycythemia, provided you catch them early. Management should focus on diet and lifestyle. Lack of balanced diet and overeating with carbohydrate excess is a primary cause for all these. Identifying a person as overweight has to be individualized. Do not depend on BMI standards. Do not attempt weight reduction while on hypoglycemic agents. And the abuse of statin is one of the major public health disasters of this century. I have never used statins in any of my patients, except some of the hereditary dyslipidemias. And luckily, COVID has given me an opportunity to come out with a book which is going to be released from tomorrow onwards. It will be available online. Guide to Clinical Practice in Post-COVID World. In fact, it's a humble attempt from my part to save the human species and modern medicine, how to practice modern medicine in the post-COVID era, at least. Thank you for the patient hearing. If you have any queries, I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that excellent presentation. If you have any queries, please.
Hello.
There are a few questions. Can I read now?
Please ask.
What is the role of circadian rhythm in non-communicable disease? Is oversleeping causes obesity?
Oversleeping definitely will cause obesity. Sleep has to be restricted to enough. Sleep is important in reducing stress, but oversleeping will certainly lead to obesity.
So what is the connection between non-communicable disease and sleep?
Non-communicable disease and sleep. Sleep is important, as I mentioned before. Adequate sleep will relieve stress. Adequate sleep is important for relieving your stress. And that is one important problem. As mentioned, oversleeping is in lazy people. Definitely, they have other wrong habits also. And they are more prone for developing non-communicable diseases. So it is only a manifestation of their lazy character if they are oversleeping. Sleep, adequate and regular sleep. Sleep hygiene has to be ensured. Sleep hygiene means ensuring adequate sleep, not only ensuring adequate sleep, a timing of the sleep also. Regularity in sleep. The sleep rhythm has to be observed. And that is a manifestation of proper stress relief, and means manifestation of good lifestyle habit. And that will also help in relieving some of the disease. That by alone is not enough. In fact, all the good lifestyle habits has to be combined. One alone will not, that is why there is no point focusing on one aspect alone. Exercise alone will not do, diet alone will not do. Everything has to be looked at.
Thank you, sir. And next question, when is insulin indicated for treatment of type 2 diabetes? What is your take on intermittent fasting? How often and how long?
Intermittent fasting is better is to advise them to have a regular fasting of 12 hours per day. That's the most reasonable thing. So that for that you need to tell them to have the last meal of the day before 7 o'clock at even in the evening, and nothing afterwards. And then the breakfast should not be before 7 o'clock. That's the best practice. Otherwise, anybody can follow the intermittent fasting of once a week can be done. But if it is once a week fasting followed by feasting will not help. So fasting has to be regular, but it has to be combined with regular dietary habits. I would recommend regular fasting rather than intermittent fasting.
Thank you, sir. Next question, when to take water during food intake? Before, after, or during food intake?
That depends on your preference also. But if you are on a weight reducing plan, tell them to take it before food along with vegetables and fruits, so that the stomach will not have much capacity to accommodate the carbohydrates. So it is always good to begin with water, fruits and vegetables. Some naturopaths will say it will dilute the digestive juices. Nothing will happen. It will only help them in reducing the weight, because anyway you have vegetables and fruits along with it, so that the carbohydrate consumption can be reduced.
Next question, how to calculate ideal weight if BMI is not useful?
Ideal weight, as I mentioned before, one has to find out what was a normal weight, the lowest weight when a person has completed the growth. Growth is completed at 18 to 20 years. At that stage, if a person was very lean, and if the weight was, say, for example, 50 kg and with a BMI of 17, that is a normal weight for that individual. Even 1 kilogram excess, that is abnormal for that individual. And if that person has got SGPT elevation or high blood sugar, even that 1 kilogram weight loss will help him achieve control of the disease. So the ideal weight is best has to be individualized.
Okay, sir. Next question, what about using sugar-free or jaggery for weight reduction?
No, never use sugar-free. Sugar-free is a chemical. It is a chemical by itself, means a carcinogenic chemical, it seems. Anyway, do not go for sugar-free. If you are very particular, you can use sugar and reduce on the major meal. Suppose you are using 2 chapatis. If you can cut down on half chapati, you can use sugar itself rather than going for sugar-free. Do not use sugar-free. Reduce the carbohydrate intake. You can use 1 teaspoon sugar also.
So one more question, has tapioca any connection with the diabetes?
In fact, some research was done in Kerala by Dr. Givagis initially, saying that the tapioca contains some hydrocyanic acid, and if it is dried and used without removing that, after boiling, if you do not remove that water, sometimes it can give hydrocyanic acid, which can damage the pancreas, and pancreatic diabetes has been connected with the use of tapioca as a staple diet among the agricultural workers. But I found that these people are not eating vegetables and fruits and protein. They were just eating tapioca only. That was the reason, and that led to several diseases, including pancreatic tuberculosis. So that must be the reason for, but it could be possible. Cassava is a possibility, but I don't think it is documented ever. There is a relation between tapioca, regular use of tapioca, and pancreatic diabetes, but that relation seems to be indirect because of the improper dietary habits of the people.
Okay, sir. One more question, is there any connection between oats and cholesterol?
Absolutely no relation at all. It is a marketing strategy by some people to sell the oats they want to sell. If you want to reduce cholesterol, you go for reduction of carbohydrate that you take and increase the portion of vegetables, and the total quantity has to be restricted. That is the only way. There is no point going for oats to reduce cholesterol.
Thank you, sir. There's no further questions in chat box.
Hope it is over. Any direct questions? Otherwise, we can conclude here. Any direct questions or comments? There are some people, Dr. Anantarajan is seen. Any questions?
Hello, sir.
Any question?
May
Please.
sir, you have mentioned about fried food,
Ah.
but I think we are excluding one small point, that is oil per se gives us calorie. So somebody doing some manual work, they may use this what is called ulunnu vada, parippu vada. All these things are having adequate number of protein. Oil, fat is also there. Some small amount of carbohydrate is also available. So I think we are putting a blanket no on all these things. Suppose the oil is not reused, I think we should not be so strongly objecting to that. What do you say, sir?
I will answer that. Primarily, this frying of fish, meat is the most important issue, because deep frying of fish and meat will produce carcinogens, and it will also destroy the B12 in it. The protein gets denatured and degraded. That is the first point. But the ulunnu vada and other things are not that deep fried. That is not an issue, much of an issue for the working class people. That may be giving us also protein and some calories also. But the people's sedentary work habits, if they are taking that will be excess protein and unwanted things. Anyway, there are some compromises in some areas, but primarily fried fish and meat is what we were referring to.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any other point?
Put one more point.
Please.
Yes, sir. We are seeing, you have recommended to take regularly fruits. Now, what I want to comment is, nowadays, most of these fruits, especially mangoes and all, are extremely sweet and chosen exclusively for their sweetness. And we find that large quantities of sugars are there, and that naturally will be having fructose also. And we hear that fructose is directly damaging liver and producing this insulin resistance and all those complications. Please comment on that, sir.
Again, the problem is total caloric intake is only that we need to look at. If they are using mangoes, that amount of carbohydrate in any form, even fructose is a disaccharide. That will be, it is not going to directly damage it is excess calories.
Sir, I was talking about fructose.
Even the fructose, direct damage by fructose probably just a theory only. If you're taking in moderation, none of these carbohydrates are harmful. But if you take excess of mango, and along with that, that person will be taking excess carbohydrate also. The excess carbohydrate will be damaging the liver rather than the fructose by itself. I think it is a misconcept that fructose is directly damaging, because the person who is taking excess mangoes and developing uncontrolled diabetes is definitely consuming excess carbohydrate, and any form of excess carbohydrate will be converted to fat and is stored in liver. It will definitely damage the liver.
Okay, sir.
I think that is a point, rather than blaming the mangoes for it. Mangoes in moderation will not.
No, actually, I was talking. I was pointing out the fructose part only, rather than mango.
Because fructose is several times I have heard people talking about fructose as a problem, that it can produce uric acid, it can produce this, and that. In that case, we will stop taking all the fruits. All the fruits contain fructose. But taken in moderation, it is not at all harmful. It will provide several other beneficial substances.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for raising that point. Any other?
Sir, a few more questions in the chat box. Sir, tell something about migration and changes in food habits and climate.
Changes in food habits.
Something about migration and changes in food habits and climate.
Migration of workers, or we migrating to some other place. Agreed. I got the point. Suppose you are migrating to another place. If you know what is a balanced diet, you can choose the different items. You can choose one carbohydrate, you can choose one protein, you can choose one fruits and enough water. I don't think there is any problem. Otherwise, if you are very particular, you have to prepare it yourself. There is no issue at all, because I have traveled to or different places in India, all over India, in fact, if all the states in India and several other countries, and I did not find any difficulty. Because if you know what is a balanced diet, you can easily manage it.
Is raw diet good for health?
In fact, that is an important point. The vegetables and fruits should always be taken. If it is fruits, has to be raw only. If it is boiled itself, it will spoil all the antioxidants and folic acid. It will be destroyed. So fruits should never be boiled. Vegetables, if they are taken raw, the quality will be better, but there is a risk of contamination with harmful bacteria. So to avoid that, if you can use oil and any of the oil which you like, and lime juice can be added to it, so that it can kill the germs. That's one thing. Otherwise, if you are not sure of the safety of it, you can just steam it. If you cook it, overcook it, it will destroy all the good components except the fiber in the vegetables. So vegetables are best taken raw or half boiled or just steamed. Do not cook vegetables. Fruits should never be boiled or cooked.
Okay, sir. If we are using absolutely balanced diet, is there any need for nutritional supplements to boost immunity?
In fact, if that practice is there from childhood onwards, I don't think there is any need for nutritional supplements. But we, even I am taking vitamin supplements because we started knowing about balanced diet and practicing it only very recently only. So we may require it because our body may not be tuned to make it by taking balanced diet alone. That's a question very difficult to answer, but still, if you are taking it regularly, you don't need a vitamin supplement.
Is honey good as a sweetener?
Honey is a natural sugar, so it may be better than the refined sugar. That's all. Nothing superior about it, because it does not contain. Because refined sugar might contain aloxan because of the bleaching and to make it whiter. So the natural sugar is the jaggery. That it may be just like jaggery only.
Does badams decrease the abdominal fat? And one
No.
more question, what is the role of dry fruits?
These are some of the misconceptions among our people. There are people who go for these some fancy pulses and dry fruits, thinking that they are shortcuts for health. They are not. They can be used as a source of protein along with the cereals. One of these cashew nuts or badam can be used along with cereals when you want to quickly get a protein source, rather than cooking pulses otherwise. Or if you do not have access to fish, egg, or meat, you can use it as a quick source of protein. Do not find it is superior.
So what is your advice regarding taking multivitamin tablets instead of fruits?
It can never be instead of fruits. You can take it to supplement if you think the absorption is poor or the adequacy is less. Then you may take multivitamin tablets, but never in place of fruits. Along with fruits, if at all you may take.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
No further question.
Thank you. Let us wind up.
Okay, sir, we can wind up.
Thank you all for the patient listening.
Okay. And now I invite Dr. Nishat Rahman, a Senior Resident, Department of Family Medicine, for vote of thanks.
Very good evening to one and all. First, I express my gratitude to Dr. P.K. Shashidharan for a very elaborate as well as very enlightening talk on the lifestyle diseases, the importance of patient education in managing the various lifestyle diseases. And he also mentioned about the importance of education about the good lifestyle and balanced diet in our society as well as to our patients to have a freedom from these deadly diseases. Thank you one and all. I also thank all the participants who have gathered here, and we also expect your participation in our upcoming sessions also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.